Hi, everybody. I asked you to read Quag Keep this week by Norton. And she was actually born Alice Norton in 1912 in Cleveland, Ohio. She would change her name legally to Andre Alice Norton later on in her writing career. But while she was still in high school, she showed significant interest in writing and literature, and she would carry that over through her entire adult life. In 1932, just 2 years after she graduated from high school, she took a job in the Cleveland Public Library system. She would spend the next 26 years of her life working in various libraries and bookstores, surrounding herself with the stories of fantasy and escape that she always loved. She was only 22 when she published her first book, The Prince Commands, in 1934, and over the next 74 years, she would continue producing novels and short stories at a prolific pace, ending up with over 300 publications to her name. Yet for all of this productivity, Norton is not now a well-known author amongst the general public. It has to be acknowledged that, like Fritz Leiber, Andre Norton would eventually be recognized with Lifetime Achievement Awards from the World Science Fiction Convention, the World Fantasy Convention, and the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. But during her career, Norton had the great misfortune of being a female author of genre fiction, works that were usually characterized by her publishers as juvenile, a word that both made her career financially viable and limited the possible critical reception that her works deserved. When an author writes as prolifically as Norton did, they'll be the first to admit that not all of their works are worthy to be remembered. But Norton's overall corpus deals with many significant themes and ideas that certainly merit a second look. One of her earliest novels was a modern adaptation of Huon of Bordeaux, a 13th century French romance, and Norton would exhibit her knowledge of and interest in the distant past throughout her career. Nor was she, as a female author, blind to the ongoing realities of gender inequality in American society. Her longest-running series of works, the Witchworld series, told the story of a parallel universe in which magic overtook science early on in human society, and magic was most effectively wielded by the female witches who gave the series its name. But the Witchworld series is important for another reason, because it began in 1963 with a novel, simply entitled Witchworld, that was an instance of what Farrah Mendlesohn would later term a portal fantasy, a story in which a character or characters from our world, the mundane or real world, are transported into a world dominated by magic and the supernatural. That subgenre fascinated Norton in no small part because of the powerful metaphor it provided for the act of reading itself. Books had always been doorways into alternate worlds for Norton, so it made sense that she would want to narratively analyze how it is that a single person can live in two worlds at once. So the idea of travel from the everyday world of 20th century America into a world of heroic fantasy was already a familiar one to Andre Norton when she was personally invited by Gary Gygax to participate in a session of the recently published Dungeons & Dragons game. Norton was immediately impressed, and the two struck up a deal. Norton would publish a novel set in Gygax's realm of Greyhawk, and based on the concept of characters actually being transported into a fantasy role-playing game, and Gygax would give a marketing platform for the book in his company's magazine, The Dragon. The result of that partnership would be our reading for this week, Quag Keep. The novel is a classic, though somewhat unusual instance of a portal fantasy. Rather than being bodily transported into the realms of Oerth, the name of the world in which the city of Greyhawk resides, the main characters are essentially avatars or projections of people from our world into that of the fantasy. It was an inspired choice by Norton, since it left her characters with a form of multiple personality disorder, a psychic fragmentation that embodies both Todorov's fantasy concept of hesitation and Fine's social conception of frames. Throughout the novel, all the characters, particularly the point of view character Milo Jagon, suffer from the effects of their split existences. Through somewhat of a deus ex machina, the Oerthian wizard, Hystaspes, offers them a limited in-narrative explanation for their condition, pointing out that their own fates may be tied to that of both of the realms in which they exist, a possibility raised in the following exchange with the bard Weimark. Quote, You pride yourself enough upon your imaginations, used to play your game of risk and fortune. Use that imagination now. Would Greyhawk, would all the lands known to us be the same if they were intermingled with your own space-time? And how would your space-time suffer? Distinctly a point, the bard admitted, save that we may not have the self-sacrificing temperament to rush forth to save our world. What I remember of it, which seems to grow less by the second, does not now awaken me a great ardor to fight for it. Fight for yourselves, then, snapped the wizard. In the end, with most men, it comes to self-preservation. End quote. The first notable thing in this passage is Weimark's somewhat anti-heroic claim about the world that he, or rather his player, Max Stein, comes from. Quag Keep was published in the United States at a time of severe division and uncertainty. The Vietnam War had just ended, but the ideological wounds it had wrought were still fresh. The nation had just come through the Watergate scandal that eroded confidence in public officials, and the entire world was suffering from an economic recession connected with energy costs. In other words, Weimark's offhanded comments brings home to the reader just how real-world events were fueling the interest in escapism that the novel itself catered to. But even more than the social commentary, the exchange between Weimark and Hystaspes highlights one of the central themes of the book, that of free choice, compulsion, and the divided self. To what degree are any of the characters in this story, to what degree are any of the readers of the novel empowered to decide their own destinies? Even though Hystaspes uses a powerful magic spell called a geas, a word Gary Gygax borrowed from Celtic mythology, to force the characters to seek out the dragon Lichus, he knows that he has to also convince them that it is in their own best interest to find answers about their presence in Oerth. That is to say, each of the characters in the story are literally pawns in a game, but they also seem to have distinct choices that they can make. But at the same time, it is their increased awareness of the very terms of their control that makes that decision-making more difficult. This fact arises in an intriguing moment much later on in the novel, when Milo is reflecting, in an almost meta-narrative way, on the roles that each of the party members have played in their quest. When he gets to the problematic case of the seemingly useless lizard folk character, Gulf. Quote, "The lizard folk had their own lands, and with their own weapons were warriors of high standing. Therefore, there must be some reason why Gulf should ride with them now. Not just because he also wore the bracelet which was the badge of their slavery to some unknown menace." As he gazed into the fire, Milo was once more plagued by fleeting memories of that other world. He stirred uneasily. Those, he must seal them away for his own sake. To be divided in mind when danger stalked, and when did it not here, was to be weakened. End quote. Norton here provides an interesting reflection on what might best be called an instrumentalist view of human existence. In the game of Dungeons & Dragons, the value of each character is measured by whatever in-game, sometimes even called mechanical, advantages and skills they might bring to the party. But as a social event, role-playing characters reflect and amplify the innate human qualities of the players who bring them to life. Qualities that, one hopes, have value in and of themselves, regardless of what use value they bring to the party. It is precisely in reflecting on these thoughts that Milo's memories of his other human self, those of Martin Jefferson, are brought to the fore. Of course, what snaps Milo out of his reverie is the reality that his existence, perhaps in both of his worlds, is endangered. In spite of being labeled escapist fiction, one of the abiding consistencies of almost all fantasy literature is that it describes perilous realms where there is a constant sense of threat, where, as Milo put it, danger stalks. Norton was well aware of this, which is probably why she recognized the symbolic importance of these strange polyhedral dice that have come to be associated with role-playing games. The use of so many different multi-sided dice grew out of the wargaming background that many early role-players had. Without being able to set odds, percentage chances, for a wide variety of different actions, role-playing games would only be a sort of amateur drama with a collaborative but still determined script. The dice add a real element of risk to what characters attempt. Norton, of course, made the dice into the central magical objects of her narrative, and in so doing, made the question of chance, freedom, and destiny central to her story. This fact becomes more and more apparent as the story draws to a close. At one key moment, Milo is caught in the illusory magic of a witch who had previously almost killed his friend and ally, Niall Fangtooth. Milo is only saved by the seemingly random fact that a broken sandal strap draws his attention to his powerful magic ring, which in turn reveals the illusion. Quote, "It was chance that brought a break in the web that enmeshed Milo. Or was there such a thing as chance, he sometimes wondered afterwards. Did not the priests of Ohm advance the belief that all actions in the world, no matter how small or insignificant, had its part in the making of a pattern determined by powers men could not even begin to fathom with their earth-tied senses?" End quote. What's perhaps most interesting about this passage is that it's not clear whom the speaker is. Is this Milo reflecting yet again on his place in the world of Oerth? Is this some combination of Milo and Martin contemplating the nature of existence? The typographical cue suggests that it is the third-person omniscient narrator of the novel, but who is that person? And if they really are omniscient, then why the string of questions in this passage? In fact, that uncertainty leads to the possibility that what we're hearing in this moment is the authorial voice of Andre Norton herself emerging through the narrative. Quag ends abruptly and ambiguously. The immediate reason for that, as you may have guessed, is that Norton was planning on writing a sequel to the novel. Though she never finished it in her lifetime, it was finally completed and published by her collaborator Gene Robbie in 2006. But I also like to think that Norton left Quag Keep in an essentially unfinished state because it raised within her too many questions about fate, chance, and ultimate meaning. Questions that could never have final answers, but that could literally be played out through games, through art, and through human striving.